October 16, 1956, an 89-year-old architect stood before a room of reporters in Chicago and unveiled plans for the most audacious building ever conceived. 528 stories, 1 mile high, a glass and steel spire that would soar 5,280 feet into the sky. Frank Lloyd Wright called it the Illinois. It would be a city in the sky housing 100,000 people with offices, apartments, hotels, and parking for up to 15,000 cars. Atomic-powered elevators would shoot up and down at a mile per minute. 100 helicopters could land on platforms near the top. Wright insisted it was practical, feasible, ready to build with 1950s technology, but not a single brick was ever laid. The mile-high tower remained forever on paper. So what happened? Why did the most ambitious skyscraper ever designed, a building that would still be the tallest structure on Earth today, remain nothing more than a drawing? This is the story of Frank Lloyd Wright's impossible tower, a vision so bold it was decades ahead of its time, a building that changed architecture without ever being built, and the question that still haunts it, was it ever meant to be built at all? By 1956, Frank Lloyd Wright was already a legend. Falling Water, the Guggenheim Museum, the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo. For over 6 decades, Wright had been reshaping American architecture, but Wright was furious with modern skyscrapers. He dismissed the steel and glass boxes of architects like Mies van der Rohe as monotonous and soulless. If architects were going to build tall, Wright believed, they should build really tall, and do it right. Wright had been experimenting with tall buildings for decades. In 1927, he proposed St. Mark's Tower with a revolutionary taproot structural system, a central concrete core anchored deep in the earth, with floors cantilevering out like branches from a tree trunk. The 1929 crash killed the project, but in 1950, Wright realized the concept at the S.C. Johnson Research Tower, 15 floors, then the Price Tower in 1956, 19 stories. The tree that escaped the crowded forest. The Illinois was the extreme evolution of this idea. Proof of concept scaled up to 528 stories. Wright hated urban sprawl. He imagined the Illinois as part of his Broadacre City vision, one massive vertical hub surrounded by open green space. The tower would consolidate Chicago's scattered government offices, businesses, and housing into one structure, freeing up the ground plane. One tower to replace an entire downtown. And there was another motivation. At 89, watching younger modernists claim the spotlight, Wright wanted to reclaim architecture's throne with a building so audacious it would make everything else look timid. The Empire State Building would be a mouse by comparison. This wasn't just architecture, this was a statement. The numbers were staggering: 5,280 feet to the roof, 5,706 feet with antenna, over 4 times the Empire State Building's height and nearly twice today's Burj Khalifa, 528 floors, 18.4 million square feet, 3 times the Pentagon, capacity 100,000 people, parking for 15,000 cars, platforms for 100 helicopters, highways and rail lines feeding the base. Wright wasn't designing a skyscraper, he was designing a self-contained vertical metropolis. The foundation, a 15-story deep taproot caisson sinking into bedrock like an upside-down Eiffel Tower. From this, a massive reinforced concrete core would rise, housing utilities, elevators, and mechanicals. Floors would cantilever outward from the core like tree branches. An external steel tripod frame would brace against wind and earthquakes. The building would taper as it rose, forming an elongated triangular pyramid. Wright made a bold claim: the tapered form and rigid structure meant loads are at equilibrium at all points. There would be no sway at the peak. This was 1956, before tuned mass dampers existed. Engineers today are skeptical. At that height, occupants would likely feel motion during high winds. The elevators were perhaps most revolutionary. Traditional cables couldn't work at a mile high, they'd be too heavy. Wright proposed 76 elevators using rack-and-pinion rail systems climbing on toothed tracks like vertical trains. Each would be a 5-story tandem cab, loading passengers for 5 floors simultaneously. Divided into zones serving different vertical sections, they'd travel at 60 miles per hour. 3 times faster than any 1950s elevator. Wright claimed the system could evacuate the building in 1 hour. He called them atomic-powered elevators, a phrase that grabbed headlines. Wright also minimized stairways, assuming the fireproof structure and elevators would suffice, a plan that violated every fire safety code in existence. Every aspect pushed beyond conventional limits. The foundation, the structure, the elevators, the scale. It was brilliant, visionary, decades ahead of its time, and nobody knew if any of it would actually work. Wright planned a grand theatrical event at Orchestra Hall seating 2,500. Reality fell short and the venue moved to the Sherman House Hotel Assembly Room. On October 16, 1956, Wright stood before an invited audience with a 25-foot-tall illustration of the Illinois looming behind him. He spent hours methodically explaining structural logic, floor layouts, and transportation systems. He'd annotated the drawing with names of great engineers and historical monuments, framing the Illinois alongside the pyramids and Eiffel Tower as the next step in architectural evolution. Wright insisted the design was practical and expedient, not fantasy, real architecture. Media response was split. Some newspapers hailed it as a thrilling vision of the future, others called it preposterous. The fantasy of an aging architect desperate for attention. Engineers raised immediate objections about foundation loads, wind forces, and emergency evacuation. Chicago Mayor Richard J. Daley attended a private dinner. Wright distributed a special catalog detailing the tower. Headlines followed, but beneath the publicity, one fact was impossible to ignore. There was no client, no budget, no construction site. The Illinois wasn't a commissioned project. It was an idea Wright offered to the world, hoping someone would step forward to make it real. No one did. Why it never happened? The simple answer: it was impossible. The technology didn't exist. High-strength concrete essential for supporting 528 stories hadn't been developed. 1950s concrete couldn't handle the compressive forces. Modern supertalls use concrete rated 14,000 to 20,000 psi. Typical 1950s concrete maxed at 3,000 to 5,000 psi. Wind forces at 5,000 plus feet would be extreme. Tuned mass dampers to counteract sway weren't invented until the 1970s. Wright had no wind tunnel testing or computer modeling, just calculations and confidence. Fire safety was catastrophic. Evacuating 100,000 people using only elevators violated every code. Elevators can fail, power can be lost. No building inspector would approve it. The elevators themselves were pure speculation. No rack-and-pinion system traveling at 60 miles per hour had ever been built. The economics were impossible. Wright never stated a cost estimate, probably because any honest number would have been astronomical, multiple billions in the 1950s dollars. Chicago didn't have demand for 18.4 million square feet. The post-war boom was driving development outward, not upward. And timing: Wright was 89. He died in 1959, just 3 years after the unveiling. Even if everything had aligned, he wouldn't have lived to see it built. Which raises the question, did Wright ever really expect it to be built? Or was the Illinois always a provocation, a final challenge to an architectural profession he felt had lost its ambition? The Illinois remained frozen in 1956, a vision too grand for its time, and perhaps for any time. The Illinois was never built, but it changed architecture anyway. Wright anticipated features that wouldn't appear for decades. Mixed-use vertical cities, now standard in supertalls like the Burj Khalifa and Shanghai Tower, aerodynamic tapering to reduce wind loads, multi-deck high-speed elevators, and the central core with cantilevered floors structure that defines modern skyscrapers. When the Burj Khalifa opened in 2010 at 2,717 feet, roughly half Wright's proposed height, the design echoed the Illinois, a telescoping spire, mixed-use program, and vertical city ambition. Other proposed megatowers continue the chase. Tokyo's Sky Mile Tower, Saudi Arabia's Jeddah Tower, aiming for 1,000 meters, China's Phoenix Towers. Nearly 70 years later, no structure has reached 1 mile high. Wright's vision remains the unrealized frontier. The Illinois became a symbol of audacity in design. It's taught in architecture schools, displayed in museums, MoMA's 2017 Wright Retrospective, and debated by scholars, serious proposal or provocation. Most conclude both, a thought experiment that expanded what architects might consider possible. The Illinois exists in a realm of pure possibility, untainted by the compromises and practical realities that diminish most visions. It remained perfect because it remained theoretical, frozen at its moment of maximum ambition. That's its legacy, not as a building, but as an idea that proved even impossible dreams can change the world. So what happened to Frank Lloyd Wright's mile-high tower? Nothing, and everything. The Illinois was never built, not one foundation poured, not one beam raised. The technology wasn't ready, the money didn't exist, the client never materialized. Wright died in 1959 without seeing it rise, but the Illinois succeeded in its real purpose, expanding the realm of possibility. It forced architects to ask why not, and think in miles instead of feet. Every super tall built since exists in its shadow. Today, Wright's tower remains the unrealized frontier, maybe waiting for someone with the technology and courage to attempt it, or maybe forever on paper as a monument to imagination. Either way, it became immortal. The Illinois will never crumble, never be demolished, never become outdated. It exists beyond time, forever bold, forever reaching toward the sky. Perhaps that's what Wright intended all along, not to build the tallest building in the world, but to build the tallest dream. The Illinois may still be waiting for its moment, but even on paper, it already changed the skyline of imagination. If you enjoyed this story, check out our video on the Sagrada Familia, another impossible architectural dream that's still under construction 140 years after it began.